You know how it is you want to get a real handle on a complex topic, understand it deeply, but without getting totally overwhelmed? Facing a huge pile of information can be daunting, right?
Definitely.
That's where we come in. Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to getting seriously clued in and hopefully having a bit of fun too.
Absolutely. We're here to take those dense, sometimes tricky ideas and, boil them down, highlight the key insights so you can grasp the essentials pretty quickly.
And today, we're diving into some really thought-provoking stuff. We've got Arnold Ehret's Rational Fasting, translated from German. And let me tell you, his core idea about what really causes disease, it's pretty unconventional.
Unconventional is putting it mildly, yeah. But it's a very internally consistent system he lays out. Our mission here is to unpack Ehret's central arguments, explore his, well, surprising claims, and really trying to get inside his perspective on health and illness. We're looking specifically at his book.
Okay, let's set the stage. What's the sort of standard view of disease? How do most of us think about it?
Well, typically we think of diseases as things that come from outside, right?
Mhm.
Like bacteria, viruses.
Invaders.
Exactly, invaders. Or maybe it's something genetic, a predisposition we have. It's often focused on external causes or, inherent weaknesses in the body.
That makes sense. That's kind of how medicine often frames it, finding the specific bug or the genetic marker.
Right, and Ehret acknowledges this. He mentions modern bacteriology focusing on specific microbes and the idea of disposition, that some people are just more susceptible. That's the conventional ground.
Okay. But Ehret,
Mm.
he takes a sharp turn away from that, doesn't he?
He completely flips it, yeah. He has this fundamental disagreement about where disease actually starts.
So what is it then? What's his big idea?
His central thesis, and he's very clear about this, is that all diseases, even hereditary ones, with only tiny exceptions for maybe extreme unhygienic situations, are caused solely and exclusively by biologically wrong, unnatural food, and, this is crucial, by eating too much of it. Overnourishment.
Wow. Okay. So it's not the germ, it's the food.
But
Fundamentally.
fundamentally, that's the core takeaway right from the start. What we eat and how much is the enemy, according to Ehret, not external attackers.
Yeah, that's radical.
Yeah.
So if it's not germs causing the problem directly, what does Ehret say is happening inside the body? This is where mucus comes in, right?
Exactly. That's his key concept. For Ehret, the body's universal response, whenever it's in a diseased state, is to secrete mucus. And in worse cases, pus, which he basically describes as decomposed blood. This mucus secretion, he says, happens in all diseases.
Mm. But hold on, our bodies need some mucus, don't they? Like for lubrication,
Yeah.
protection?
Good point. Yes, he does acknowledge that. He's clear that a healthy body has necessary mucus lymph fluids, stuff in the bowels to keep things moving, that sort of thing. His focus is on the excess mucus,
The bad stuff.
the pathological mucus, yeah. The stuff he believes builds up directly because we're eating these unnatural, biologically inappropriate foods.
Okay, so where does this excess stuff come from and what problems does he say it causes?
Well, his theory is that the organs designed to handle secretions get overloaded from processing these wrong foods constantly.
Overwhelmed.
Right. And when they can't cope, the excess mucus gets into the bloodstream. Then, this circulating mucus can cause blockages, congestion, especially, he thinks, if you get chilled, catch a cold.
Ah, okay.
And that congestion is what we experience as symptoms. Heat, inflammation, pain, fever. That's the disease manifesting.
He connects this idea to a lot of different conditions, doesn't he? Not just colds.
Oh, absolutely. He points to the obvious ones. First, colds, bronchitis, pneumonia, consumption, tuberculosis, where you clearly see mucus.
Yeah.
But then he goes much further. He argues it's the root cause, even when mucus isn't obvious on the surface. Things like ear problems, eye issues, skin conditions, stomach trouble, heart disease, rheumatism, gout, even mental health issues, what he called insanity. He sees this hidden, accumulated mucus as the common denominator.
That's incredibly broad. So if this mucus is the villain, what's Ehret's solution? How do we fight back?
His main weapon is what he calls the mucusless diet.
Makes sense.
It focuses on foods he believes don't create this harmful mucus, primarily fruit, and sometimes, especially during fasting, just water or maybe lemonade.
And what does he claim happens when you switch to this diet? Does the mucus just disappear?
Well, his idea is that when you stop putting the mucus-forming food in, the digestive system gets a break. It's not constantly working on that stuff, so it redirects its energy. And it starts breaking down the mucus that's already built up, the stuff stored in the body, what he calls pathologic beds, kind of like hardened waste deposits.
And how do you know this is happening? Is there proof?
According to Ehret, yes, very direct proof. He says with unconditional certainty that this stored mucus will start coming out. You'll see it in your urine, in your feces.
Really?
Yes. And if the disease is more advanced, where tissue might have broken down, he says pus will also be expelled. He sees this expulsion as a sign the body is actively cleaning house, healing itself.
Okay, he must have been pretty specific about which foods he blamed for creating all this mucus.
Oh, very specific. He rails against what he calls artificial food. Things like fatty meats, bread, potatoes, starchy foods generally, farinaceous products, rice, even boiled milk, cheese. Those are the main culprits in his view.
The things many people eat every day.
Pretty much, yeah. Staple foods for many.
And he had that analogy, right? About what happens when you digest these foods. Something about paste.
Yes, quite vivid. He compares boiling these foods like grains or potatoes to making a sticky paste or slime like wallpaper glue.
Huh.
He argues that during digestion, which he sort of sees as an internal boiling, the body makes the same slimy substance because it can only really use the sugars derived from the starches. This leftover slime, he says, is foreign. The body tries to expel it, but over time it builds up, clogs things up, ferments,
Leading to problems.
leading to fermentation, blocked blood vessels, stagnant blood breaking down. So it's not just waste. It actively interferes with how the body works, in his view.
That's a strong image. And he contrasted that with fruit digestion.
Right. He says if you boil down fruit, like dates or figs, you get pulp, sure. But it becomes syrup, not slime. It doesn't ferment easily. He argues the fruit sugar is high-grade fuel the body uses completely, and the leftover cellulose isn't sticky. It passes through easily without fermenting. He even notes that boiled-down sugar is used as a preservative because it resists fermentation.
And he pointed to something simple people might notice themselves on their tongue.
Yeah, he mentions that if you cut back on food significantly or fast, you often get that coated kind of stinky tongue.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
He says that's the mucus from your stomach lining showing up. And importantly, he claims you'll often see similar stuff in the first bowel movement after you break a fast. He sees it as direct evidence.
It sounds like he was incredibly convinced. Did he try to get others to test this?
Right.
Like scientists?
He absolutely did. He directly challenged physicians and researchers to conduct experiments, said empirical testing is the foundation of science, so test it. He even encouraged individuals to repeat the self-experiments he did.
Ah, yes, the experiments on his arm. Those sounded quite dramatic. Tell us about those.
Yeah, they're striking, as he tells it. He describes making small cuts on his forearm under different dietary conditions. First, after fasting and eating only fruit. He said barely any bleeding, clotted fast, no pain, no inflammation, no mucus or pus. Healed in 3 days.
Wow.
Then he tried it on a vegetarian diet, but one including starches, which he still considered mucus-forming. Healing was slower, some bleeding, slight pain, a bit of pus, mild inflammation.
Noticeably different.
Definitely. And the third time, after eating meat and some alcohol, much worse. He reported more bleeding, thin blood, definite inflammation and pain, pus for days. It only healed properly after he fasted for 2 days. The difference, especially with the fruit diet, was stark in his telling.
That's quite the demonstration, assuming his account is accurate. Did he mention any other evidence?
He did bring up a couple of other points. He mentioned reports from the Russo-Japanese War, saying Japanese soldiers, presumably on a simpler diet, healed faster than the Russian soldiers who ate more meat and drank brandy.
Interesting.
And he talked about Seneca, the Roman philosopher. Seneca reportedly avoided meat, fasted, and when he tried to commit suicide by cutting his veins and taking poison, he didn't die quickly. Ehret sort of implies his diet might have made him unusually resilient.
Okay, so the core idea is mucus clogging things up. He had an analogy for that too, didn't he? About plumbing.
Yeah, a good one. He compared disease to a city's water supply system. Imagine the pump is sending dirty water through clogged filters into the pipes.
Okay.
He says if the smallest pipes, the capillaries in the body, get clogged with mucus, you don't just try to unclog that one spot. You have to fix the source, the dirty water, the clogged filters. In the body, that means stopping the mucus supply the wrong food.
That makes the concept pretty clear.
Yeah.
So how did he apply this to something like TB, tuberculosis, where there's obviously a lot of mucus?
Right, with TB, he argued the massive amount of phlegm wasn't just coming from the lungs decomposing. He believed it was being constantly generated by the mucus-forming diet, things like milk, fatty meats, paps that patients were often fed.
So the diet was feeding the disease, in his view.
Exactly. He thought as long as they ate that way, the mucus production would continue, the lung tissue would break down, and eventually bacilli would appear. And once the bacilli appeared, he thought death was almost certain.
Right, the bacilli.
Yeah.
What was his view on them? Because normally we think of bacilli causing TB.
This is absolutely key to his whole system. He did not believe bacilli were the primary cause.
Really?
No, he saw them as a result, a byproduct. They appear, he argued, because of the decomposition and fermentation of all that accumulated mucus and the residue from boiled dead food in a clogged-up body. The mucus is the soil they grow in.
So they're like vultures showing up after the fact.
Kind of, yeah. Or maybe like maggots on decaying matter. He believed they only showed up in the later stages, and while their toxic byproducts could worsen things, they weren't the root cause. The mucus was.
Okay. So this explains why he thought even vegetarians might not be healthy.
Precisely. Because many vegetarians still eat lots of bread, pasta, maybe milk, butter, eggs, cheese, all things he classed as mucus-forming, especially starches. So avoiding meat wasn't enough in his framework if you replaced it with loads of starch.
So for him, what was the ideal, truly natural, mucus-free food?
Fruit. Only fruit. He argued that a strict fruit diet is the only truly natural and mucusless way for humans to eat. He even went so far as suggesting humans in a pure state of nature were fruitarians, living in perfect health, beauty, strength. Almost like a Garden of Eden scenario.
What about people who say eating meat is natural for humans?
He kind of sidesteps that by saying, sure, eating meat is as natural as eating other civilized foods like bread or cheese, which he also considers mucus-forming and therefore not ideal. So for him, natural in that sense didn't necessarily mean optimal or healthy.
He also warned that switching to just fruit might make you feel sick at first.
Yes, he did. He explained that initial feeling of illness as the body's starting its clean out, the detoxification process kicking in, forcing out old mucus.
Oh, feeling worse before you feel better.
Exactly. He saw it as a necessary cleansing reaction. He even mentioned his own extremely long fast, 126 days total, with 49 consecutive as proof of the body's ability to survive without food and use that time to heal and cleanse.
That fasting element seems crucial to his whole philosophy. But he acknowledged that people often fail when they try to fast. Why did he think that happened?
Mostly he thought it was because they didn't understand the process. They didn't expect that initial phase where the body starts expelling all the old gunk, the stored mucus.
They get scared when they feel bad.
Right. It feels like getting sick, not getting better. So they stop. He argued this cleansing sickness is just a temporary stage you have to pass through to reach better health. He used his own 49-day fast and improved health afterwards as his prime example. He even made this provocative comparison.
What was that?
He contrasted occasionally consuming things like meat, alcohol, coffee, tobacco, which he saw as poisons, but maybe consumed moderately, with the continuous overconsumption of seemingly harmless vegetarian foods like bread and potatoes. He suggested the constant intake of these mucus formers might be more subtly damaging long-term.
That is provocative. And he linked meat eating to alcohol, too.
He did. He claimed meat isn't really food, it's more of a stimulant because of its decay products, which he said start forming almost right after slaughter.
A stimulant.
Yeah, and he theorized that eating meat creates this unnatural craving, a demon thirst, and that alcohol is then used almost like an antidote to counteract the poisoning effects of the meat. He was definitely waging war on both meat and alcohol, pushing fruit and moderation instead.
He went into some even more, let's say, esoteric areas, too, connecting fasting to saints and radioactivity.
He did touch on that. He speculated that the miracles attributed to saints might have stemmed from their asceticism and fasting, leading to an incredibly pure, mucusless body. He used the term radioactive, perhaps metaphorically, to suggest a kind of vibrant energy or aura resulting from this state. He even claimed to have personally experienced visible electric-like emanations after sunbathing and eating fruit.
Interesting. And he observed something about longevity and diet.
Yeah, he noted that very old people were often poor people, meaning they likely ate very little throughout their lives.
Ah, frugal eaters.
Exactly. And that many great inventors and discoverers also came from poverty. He seemed to imply a link between eating less and perhaps having greater resilience or mental focus. He contrasted this by saying a sick body can regenerate by eating nothing, fasting, while a healthy body needs very little of the right food to stay vital.
Okay, so let's get practical. If someone reads this and thinks, okay, I want to reduce my mucus load according to Ehret, what did he advise?
He offered 3 main strategies. First, Fasting, he saw that as the quickest way, but reasonably avoiding overexertion and making sure the bowels are cleared at the start. He suggested shorter fasts, like 36 hours weekly if longer ones are too daunting, or maybe a 3-day fast on lemon water, then slowly reintroducing fruit.
Okay, fasting is one. What else?
Second, the mucusless diet itself for those who can't or won't fast. That means strictly avoiding the main offenders. Flour products, rice, potatoes, unless baked, which he saw as less harmful than boiled milk, cheese, meat,
So
focusing on fruits, salads with oil and lemon, non-starchy vegetables. He also suggested things like toasting bread might make it slightly less harmful. And for people prone to illness, maybe a morning fast, eating nothing until 10 a.m., then only fruit.
And the third thing?
Thorough chewing. Fletcherizing, as
Oh.
it was known then. He stressed this especially if you do still eat some mucus-forming foods. Chewing really well, he believed, reduces mucus formation and helps prevent overeating.
Right. Now, he didn't just connect mucus to disease, but also to aging and, well, losing one's looks.
Yes, he definitely extended the theory there. He argued that mucus accumulation literally obstructs the body's structure, causing the visible signs of aging and making people less physically attractive, in his view.
How so?
He contrasted killed food, cooked and processed stuff, with the living energy cells of fruit. He believed mucus clogs up the digestive system, the body's heating channel, and the glands, the filters, leading to chronic problems in aging. He also blamed the lack of minerals in boiled food for contributing to physical decline and decay.
He mentioned complexion, too.
Yeah, the white corpse color he saw in many people, he linked directly to eating dead boiled food, contrasting it with the vibrant complexion he associated with fruit and sun exposure. He saw obesity not as just extra weight, but as pathological anesthetic caused by overeating and too much fluid, leading to clogged vessels. Facial puffiness, wrinkles all down to mucus hindering circulation and blocking light and sun from the skin.
And he even had a theory about hair loss and graying linked to mucus.
He did, quite specific. He saw hair as odor organs helping expel waste. Gray hair, he thought, had more air in it, probably stinking gases, maybe sulfurous acid bleaching the pigment.
Wow.
And baldness, an internal issue, caused by these same corrosive gases damaging the hair roots from the inside. He claimed his own hair started regrowing and got its color back after he healed his kidneys with diet changes. His point was, fix digestion, and you might fix your hair.
So ultimately, he saw death itself as related to mucus.
Yes, the final stage of mucus accumulation. He argued that fatal conditions often end in heart failure because the blood vessels are clogged and the heart nerves are damaged by poisoned blood, or stroke from clogged vessels in the brain.
He mentioned leukemia.
Interpreted it simply as more mucus than blood. And conditions like cachexia, severe wasting, he saw as decay due to poor nourishment caused by the underlying mucus problem. Even when modern medicine pointed to bacilli as the cause of death, Ehret insisted mucus was the real foundation, the bed where bacilli thrived. The final death struggle, he believed, was the body's last desperate attempt to expel all that mucus.
So it all comes back to mucus.
It all comes back to mucus driven by diet. He ended on a philosophical note, suggesting the ultimate cause of unnatural death isn't disease itself, but not knowing ignorance about how to live correctly according to our biology.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. Ehret's rational fasting presents this really comprehensive, though definitely unconventional view. Everything circles back to this idea of mucus from unnatural food being the root of disease and aging.
That's the essence of it. His whole message hammers home the massive impact of diet, specifically these mucus-forming foods, on health, aging, illness. And the flip side, the power of a mucusless diet and fasting to let the body heal itself once you stop supplying the mucus fuel.
And, while it's definitely far from mainstream medicine, he does lay out a very detailed and internally logical system in his book. It certainly makes you think about what you eat, doesn't it?
It really does raise some challenging questions. If, as Ehret suggests, the body has this incredible built-in capacity for cleansing and self-healing, just waiting for us to get out of its way by changing our diet, well, what does that imply about our current approaches to health and longevity? It's definitely a perspective that sticks with you and invites a bit more digging.